When most people think of an album, they usually think of a collection of 8 to 12 songs that lasts around 40 minutes or so. Sometimes it's a bit more, and sometimes it's a bit less, but that's the general length you usually expect a record to be. But today, we're not talking about the average album. We're looking at albums that break typical conventions of runtime and last a lot longer than usual. We're talking several hours to multiple days to, well, theoretically, longer than the entire lifespan of the universe. Yeah. If there's any album on this list that you've heard of, it's definitely going to be this one, especially because it's kind of exited the realm of just weird drone harsh noise music people and is now known by a lot of people with less obscure music taste. There's a lot of memes surrounding this piece, and on some level that's kind of a shame, because I don't really think people take this album as seriously as they did when it was first coming out. Everywhere at the End of Time is essentially an artistic interpretation of a slowly worsening case of Alzheimer's disease, starting at the very early symptoms and over 6 hours moving on to the total decay of the mind. The earlier stages sample a lot of older British dance music and traditional pop to represent the good old days, but as the album continues, those samples become less and less common and more distorted as the subject's mind and memory slowly decays, until they eventually lose all self-awareness. It's honestly a very haunting listen and really gets you thinking about what it means to be conscious, and who you are without your memories. Great stuff. Natural Snow Buildings is a French music duo who make, well, long freaking music. They usually dabble with styles of ambient, drone, post-rock, psychedelic folk, and more. Their most popular record historically was their 2006 double CD album, The Dance of the Moon and Sun. But in recent years, their 6 to 7 hour odyssey, Daughter of Darkness, has developed a noticeable cult following, and this thing is awesome. It was originally released in a limited run of cassettes, but its more well-known streaming services version adds 2 bonus tracks that push this thing's length an extra hour. And man, this thing is heavy. These tracks range from like 15 minutes all the way up to 40 to 50 minutes, and I dare to say that not a second is wasted. They create these dark but curious soundscapes that go a lot faster than you might think. A lot of music around this length can be very gimmicky, but this album really earns its playtime. Merzbow is a Japanese noise project headed by one Masami Akita, and his work is definitely not for everyone. I mean, the harsh, dense soundscapes he creates on albums like Pulse Demon are certainly an acquired taste, but there are people who do consider his work to be great, and more power to them. Akita has made hundreds of albums, many of which you probably couldn't even find if you wanted, but generally, he doesn't ask for too much of your time. Generally. His album Merzbient is a bit less rigid than some of his other stuff, but it definitely makes up for that with its massive runtime of 10 hours. Which, I mean, it's there if you want it. Speaking of Japanese long music, I guess, this is a collection of experimental long-form music by a few dozen artists. A lot of this music fits under the onkyo genre, which, according to Rate Your Music, is a form of Japanese experimental music that focuses on the exploration of the physical traits of sound rather than music as a form of expression. There are a lot of gaps of silence here, and the music is quiet and unassuming, though that's just a general description. There are a lot of artists here playing a lot of different instruments, so there's a lot of variation in sound, and I guess that's kind of the point. Though, as you probably expect, it's not really something you'd put on at parties, unless your friends like improvised electroacoustic music. In that case, then, wow, you've got cool-ass friends. There's a good chance you've heard of the Flaming Lips. They're actually really well known for their massive discography, including very popular releases like The Soft Bulletin and Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots. But we're talking about their pretty morbid 2011 Halloween project, 24-hour song Skull. This album contains one track, titled Seven Skies H3. This album had a limited run of 13 copies only. Each copy was a USB drive with the song encased in a real human skull. Yeah. Buying the Flaming Lips song in skull format would have set you back $5,000 too. It certainly exists for the gimmick, but it definitely does have a lot of interesting parts, even if sometimes it overstays its welcome. I mean, it is 24 hours, though it's an admirable art project nonetheless. Soullessness, Soulnessless. God, that's confusing. Terre Thaemlitz is an American-Japanese producer, writer, speaker, composer, DJ, and more. Her most well-known work, at least the one most viewers of this video are most likely to be familiar with, is Midtown 120 Blues, a deep house record that serves as a treatise on house music as a whole and its troubled, often ignored history. Soulnessless acts primarily as a critique of religion in its first 4 tracks, and a critique of the concept of an album in the music industry in its almost 30-hour 5th track, Canto 5, Meditation on Wage Labor and the Death of the Album. And it's a meditation, alright. It's not looped or anything, first of all. The whole track was recorded in several individual improvised recordings of Thaemlitz on the piano for 4 to 6 hours. As a whole, the record is self-described rather facetiously as the world's first full-length MP3 album, because the whole thing is just under the maximum file length for an MP3 based on FAT32 size limitations. In writings associated with the music, Thaemlitz describes the album as a commentary on how the average album length has increased over time with the advent of new technology, and record producers and artists are now working more and more for longer albums despite not getting a significant change in pay. Although, she says it a lot more eloquently than I do. All in all, it's a really cool piece of music. I certainly would recommend at least the first 4 cantos, as they're not too long. The 5th one, being 32 hours, is a lot harder to recommend. It's a song that exists mostly for the commentary on its size, more so than any specific content in it. You know, all things considered, I'm pretty inclusive when it comes to what is considered music and what isn't. Like, even things like harsh noise are things I can consider music, even if it's on the edge. Though this next one is definitely putting my definition to the test. Francisco López is a Spanish experimental sound artist who focuses primarily on making nature and field recordings. So if you want to listen to a rainforest for 70 minutes, he has you covered. 7 Nights, despite what I originally thought, was not a field recordings album though. It's essentially 7 extremely long and low drone pieces that last 8 hours each. And I mean it when I say it's low. You probably won't be able to hear a lot of it on laptop speakers, or even headphones. No, that's not a joke. This album by Bowl of Heaven is 3 quintillion years. That's a 3 with 48 numbers behind it. I'm not going to even try to read out the album title for you. Bowl of Heaven is the project of music duo Neil Keener and the late Clayton Counts, who interestingly enough, and I have to tell you this, was a notorious prank caller in the 90s and would frequently prank call the Alex Jones Show. Small world. From the start, Bowl of Heaven was mostly making ambient and drone music, with the occasional mix of things like post-rock and noise. But they made a lot of music. Hundreds of albums. And a lot of them were really long. They made an album called 28, Even to the Edge of Doom, which was a full 24 hours. And later on they made 45, The Wicked Cease from Struggling, which lasted a whole week. And they kept going. The music was often gimmicky, to be honest. I mean, I won't lie. There is some stuff they've made that I actually really like, but I mean, they've literally made like 3 albums that were just Clayton's air conditioner going on for a few hours. Their most famous releases are likely the 1-2 punch of 209, Blurred with Tears and Suffering Beyond Hope, and 210, Like a Wall in Which an Insect Lives and Gnaws, which are 6 months and almost 6 years long. They didn't stop there though. They eventually, with the power of nested zip files, went even further, creating albums that lasted unfathomable amounts of time. Octillions, nonillions, undecillions of years. Jesus. I love the album covers for these too. They're so unassuming for such bizarre music. The band definitely had a habit of pushing the limits of digital media. They have made a few releases that have negative album lengths, however that works. They have released files that are completely corrupted, though some of them are made to be restorable and are listenable if you mess with the files a bit. I have to personally thank my friend Roxy for her many writings on the band. She's, like, their biggest fan, and she saved me a lot of time. If you're a Rate Your Music user, definitely check out her Bowl of Heaven binge list, where she has a written review of every single Bowl of Heaven release. It's really interesting and really fascinating. I barely have scratched the surface here with the absurdity of their music. If there's anything to learn from these records, it's that the world of music is large and truly boundless. There are times where everything I listen to sounds the same, and I really need something that provides a very different experience than the usual 4-minute pop song. And these albums, well, at least the more reasonably length ones, can do a lot for that. I mean, stuff like the bajillion-year-long Bowl of Heaven albums or 7 Nights by Francisco López definitely exist mostly for the novelty of the length itself, but some of the stuff like the Caretaker's album and the works of Natural Snow Buildings are actually really great. And even if some Bowl of Heaven albums are more gimmicks than they are serious music, there still is something really interesting about their efforts to push the concept of what an album can be to its absolute limit. Art wouldn't be nearly as interesting without people trying to push its limits. Thanks for watching. Feel free to let me know about more absurdly long albums if you want. I only covered a few today, and there's a lot more. I'll see you all around.